Sir, before you go any farther, I need to see your ID. You don't belong in this building, and you'll need to take the stairs. Let's not make this worse.
Wrong. I'm not showing you a thing.
I'm asking polite right now. Hand it over and step away from the elevator.
No. I'm here for a meeting, and I'm using the elevator like everybody else. I'm not walking up 10 floors.
A decorated police chief was arrested and spent the night in jail because he refused to show his ID to enter an elevator. Before we continue, let me take this opportunity to thank you so much for supporting our channel. Just choosing to watch our video means a lot to us. Before we go any further, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this is your first time here. It was a Tuesday afternoon in downtown Detroit when Chief Vernon Blake walked into the lobby of the Riverside Tower, a gleaming 40-story building that housed both corporate offices and luxury condos. Vernon was 50 years old, a 28-year veteran of the Detroit Police Department, and he'd been chief for the last 4 years. He wore a tailored black suit, polished shoes, and carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who'd earned his position through decades of service. He was there for a meeting on the 32nd floor with the mayor's office about new community policing initiatives. The elevator bank was straight ahead. A group of white professionals in business attire stood waiting. Vernon walked toward them, briefcase in hand. That's when Officer Garrett Lynch stepped in front of him. Lynch was 35, a patrol officer with 6 years on the force. He wore his uniform tight across his chest, arms crossed, blocking Vernon's path to the elevator. "Hold on," Lynch said. "Can I see some ID?" Vernon stopped, looked at the officer's badge, then back at his face. "Excuse me?" "ID. I need to see identification before you can go up." Vernon's jaw tightened. He glanced at the white professionals who'd already stepped into the elevator without being stopped. "Officer, I don't need to show you ID to use an elevator." Lynch stepped closer. "This is a secure building. I'm asking you for identification." "There's no law that says I have to identify myself to enter a public elevator," Vernon replied, his voice firm but controlled. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting." He moved to step around Lynch. "You don't belong here," Lynch said, louder now. "Use the stairs." Vernon stopped cold. The professionals in the elevator went silent, watching. Vernon turned slowly, his eyes locked on Lynch. "I don't belong here?" "You heard me. Stairs are that way," Lynch pointed across the lobby. Vernon's face hardened. 28 years of service, 4 years as chief, and this officer, this kid, was telling him he didn't belong in a building where he had a scheduled meeting with the mayor's office. "I'm going to that elevator," Vernon said quietly, "and you're going to step aside." Lynch didn't move. Not without ID. Vernon had had enough. He stepped forward, shoulder angled, pushing past Lynch toward the elevator doors. Lynch's hand shot out and grabbed Vernon's arm. "Don't touch me," Vernon said, his voice sharp as a blade. But Lynch didn't let go. Instead, he yanked Vernon backward, spinning him around. "You just assaulted a police officer." Vernon's eyes went wide. "I assaulted you? You grabbed me." "You pushed me. That's assault on an officer." Lynch's voice rose, carrying across the marble lobby. "Turn around, hands behind your back." The elevator doors closed. The white professionals inside stared through the narrowing gap as it ascended without Vernon. "I'm not putting my hands anywhere," Vernon shot back. "You have no legal grounds to detain me. I'm a United States citizen in a public building, and you've just committed battery by putting your hands on me." Lynch pulled out his handcuffs. "Last chance, hands behind your back or I will use force." Vernon stood his ground, briefcase still in his left hand. His entire body was rigid with controlled fury. "You want to arrest me for trying to get on an elevator? Do you understand what you're doing right now?" "What I'm doing is my job," Lynch said. "You refused to comply. You pushed a police officer, and now you're resisting. Those are crimes." "This is racial profiling," Vernon said, his voice cutting through the lobby. "You didn't ask anyone else for ID, just me." Lynch's face flushed red. "This has nothing to do with race. This has to do with you breaking the law." Vernon took a step back, his hands visible at his sides. "I want your badge number. I want your supervisor's name, and I want it right now." "You'll get it at the station," Lynch said. He moved forward again, reaching for Vernon's wrist. Vernon jerked his arm away. "Don't put your hands on me again." That's when Lynch called for backup on his radio. "Officer needs assistance at Riverside Tower. Subject is non-compliant and aggressive." Vernon couldn't believe what he was hearing. Subject? Non-compliant? Aggressive? The words police used to justify force. The words he'd heard 1,000 times in his career, usually describing someone who was actually dangerous, not a 50-year-old man in a suit trying to attend a meeting. 2 more officers arrived within minutes, rushing through the lobby doors. Lynch pointed at Vernon. "He assaulted me and he's resisting arrest." Vernon raised both hands slowly, palms out. His briefcase hung from his fingers. "I did not assault anyone. This officer stopped me from entering an elevator and grabbed me when I tried to pass. Everything he's saying is a lie." One of the new officers, a younger man with a nervous expression, looked between them. "Sir, just cooperate and we can sort this out." "Sort what out?" Vernon's voice was louder now, echoing off the walls. "I'm being detained for walking toward an elevator. That's what needs sorting out." Lynch stepped forward with the cuffs again. "Hands behind your back. Final warning." Vernon didn't move. He stood there, a chief of police being treated like a criminal, and every fiber of his being told him to resist. Not with violence, but with defiance, with the refusal to accept an injustice simply because it came with a badge. "No," Vernon said. Lynch grabbed his wrist hard, twisting it. Vernon pulled back instinctively, and that's when all 3 officers rushed him. They forced Vernon to the ground in the middle of the lobby. His briefcase skidded across the polished marble floor. His cheek pressed against the cold stone as 3 sets of hands pinned him down. He didn't swing at them, he didn't kick, but he didn't go limp either. He strained against their grip, his voice booming through the space. "Get off me! You have no right, no legal right!" Lynch drove his knee into Vernon's back, wrenching his arms behind him. The metal cuffs bit into his wrists. Vernon kept shouting, kept resisting, his body tense as steel cable. "Stop resisting!" Lynch yelled, loud enough for his body camera to catch every word. Vernon's suit jacket tore at the shoulder, his tie twisted around his neck. A small crowd had gathered now, phones out, recording. Security guards stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene. They hauled Vernon to his feet. His breathing was heavy, his eyes blazing with fury. Lynch read him his rights in a monotone voice, while the other officers held his arms. "You're making the biggest mistake of your career," Vernon said, his voice shaking, not with fear, but with rage. "I'm Chief Vernon Blake of the Detroit Police Department, and you just arrested your superior officer on false charges." Lynch's expression didn't change. If anything, his grip tightened. "I don't care if you're the governor. You assaulted me, and you resisted arrest. That's what my camera shows." They walked him out through the lobby in handcuffs, past the security desk, past the gawking onlookers, into the back of a patrol car like a common criminal. Vernon sat in silence during the ride to the station, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. At the precinct, they processed him. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal property logged and stored. The desk sergeant recognized him immediately, his face going pale. "Chief Blake? Sir, what—" "Call my attorney," Vernon said quietly, "and call Deputy Chief Morris. Tell him what happened." Word spread through the department like wildfire. Within an hour, Deputy Chief Raymond Morris arrived at the station, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. He found Vernon sitting in a holding cell, still in his torn suit, hands folded calmly in his lap. "Vernon, what the hell happened?" Vernon looked up. "Officer Garrett Lynch happened. He stopped me from entering an elevator, demanded ID without cause, grabbed me when I tried to pass, then arrested me for assault and resisting. His body camera has everything." Morris ran a hand over his face. Jesus Christ. Pull the footage, all of it. Body cam, building security, bystander phones, everything. Because this doesn't end here, Ray, not even close. By midnight, Vernon was released on his own recognizance. No bail required for a police chief with no criminal record. But the charges remained: assault on a police officer and resisting arrest, both felonies. The prosecutor's office would review the case. The body cam footage hit the news within 48 hours. Someone leaked it. The video showed everything. Lynch stopping Vernon, Vernon explaining he didn't need to show ID, Lynch blocking his path, telling him to use the stairs, Vernon attempting to pass, Lynch grabbing him first, Vernon pulling away, then the takedown. The video went viral. 5 million views in 3 days, 10 million by the end of the week. People who'd never heard of Vernon Blake now knew his face. They saw a black man in a suit being treated like a threat. They saw an officer who never asked anyone else for ID. They saw the moment Lynch said, "You don't belong here." The city erupted. Protests outside Riverside Tower, protests outside the precinct where Lynch worked, signs that read, "Chief Blake did nothing wrong," and "Badge doesn't mean above the law." The prosecutor charged Vernon anyway: assault on a police officer and resisting arrest. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Vernon's attorney, a sharp woman named Claudia Renfro, filed motions immediately. Motion to dismiss based on lack of probable cause, motion to suppress evidence, motion for discovery of Officer Lynch's personnel file. That personnel file was the key. Claudia spent 2 weeks fighting to get it unsealed. The police union fought back hard, citing privacy protections, but the judge ruled in her favor, and what came out of that sealed file changed everything. Garrett Lynch had a history: 3 excessive force complaints in 5 years, 2 from black suspects, 1 from a Hispanic man. All 3 complaints described the same pattern: escalation without cause, aggressive physical contact, racially charged language. None had resulted in discipline. The department had cleared him each time after internal review. But there was more. Claudia dug deeper. She found social media posts Lynch had deleted but hadn't scrubbed completely from the internet. Posts from archived forums where he'd made comments about certain neighborhoods needing tougher policing. Posts questioning affirmative action policies in police hiring. Posts suggesting people who complained about police brutality were playing the race card. She found text messages between Lynch and other officers, messages that had been preserved as part of a separate, unrelated investigation. In those texts, Lynch referred to black residents in derogatory terms. He complained about diversity promotions in the department. He specifically mentioned Vernon Blake by name 2 months before the elevator incident, calling his appointment as chief a political stunt. Claudia brought all of it to the prosecutor. She laid it out on his desk like a hand of cards. "Your officer has a documented pattern of racial bias and excessive force. He targeted my client, a decorated police chief, solely because of the color of his skin. The body cam shows he initiated physical contact. My client broke no laws, and you're charging him with felonies?" The prosecutor, a career attorney named Gerald Hastings, studied the documents. He watched the body cam footage again. He read the text messages, and he knew his case was falling apart. But he didn't drop the charges. Not yet. Political pressure from the police union kept him moving forward. They wanted Vernon to face consequences for disrespecting an officer. They wanted to send a message that resistance, even verbal resistance, wouldn't be tolerated. So they went to trial. The courtroom was packed. Media filled the gallery. Vernon sat at the defense table in a fresh suit, his expression unreadable. Lynch sat in the front row behind the prosecution, his face stone. The prosecution went first. They played the body cam footage, freezing it at the moment Vernon stepped forward toward the elevator. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you can clearly see the defendant pushing past Officer Lynch. That's assault. And when Officer Lynch attempted to detain him lawfully, the defendant resisted. Those are the facts." Then Claudia stood up. She played the full footage, unedited. She showed the jury how Lynch stopped Vernon and no one else. She highlighted the moment Lynch said, "You don't belong here." She played it 3 times. She brought in building security footage showing Lynch arriving at Riverside Tower 15 minutes before Vernon, taking a position near the elevators, watching people come and go, watching and waiting. She called expert witnesses who testified about racial profiling in policing. She called Lynch's former colleagues who described his attitude toward minority officers and civilians. She read his text messages aloud in open court, every ugly word. And then she called Vernon to the stand. He testified for 2 hours. He described his career, his record, his work as chief. He described walking into that lobby for a meeting with the mayor's office. He described Lynch stopping him, demanding ID, telling him to use the stairs. "Did you assault Officer Lynch?" Claudia asked. "No, ma'am. I attempted to walk past him to reach an elevator I had every legal right to use. He grabbed me. I pulled away from his unlawful detention. That's not assault. That's self-defense." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict came back unanimous. Not guilty on both counts. Vernon sat perfectly still as the foreperson read the decision aloud. Not guilty of assault. Not guilty of resisting arrest. The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order, but even he seemed relieved. Claudia squeezed Vernon's shoulder. He nodded once, his face calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he stood. He'd been vindicated, but vindication didn't erase what had happened, didn't erase the night in a cell, didn't erase the mugshot, didn't erase the humiliation of being forced to the ground in a public lobby. Lynch left the courtroom without a word, surrounded by union reps and fellow officers. His face was blank, but his career was over. The department launched an internal investigation the same day the verdict came down. They reviewed every complaint, every incident, every text message Claudia had exposed. 2 weeks later, Garrett Lynch was terminated, fired for conduct unbecoming an officer, for racial bias, for violations of department policy. The union threatened to fight it, but the public outcry was too loud. Even they knew this was a fight they couldn't win. Lynch tried to appeal. It went nowhere. He lost his badge, his pension eligibility, and his reputation. At 35 years old, his law enforcement career was finished. But the city wasn't done paying for what happened. Vernon filed a civil rights lawsuit. Federal court, violation of his Fourth Amendment rights, unlawful detention, false arrest, malicious prosecution. The city's attorneys tried to settle quietly, but Vernon refused. He wanted a public trial. He wanted accountability on the record. The civil case took 8 months. The city fought harder this time, trying to protect themselves from liability. But the evidence was overwhelming. The body cam footage, Lynch's history, the text messages, the wrongful arrest, the charges that never should have been filed. The jury awarded Vernon $6 million in damages. The city tried to appeal, but their own attorneys advised them to accept the verdict. Fighting it would only cost more money and generate more bad press. The final settlement was $6.2 million, the largest civil rights payout in the city's history. Vernon donated half of it to organizations fighting police misconduct and racial profiling. The other half he kept, securing his retirement and his family's future. He stayed on as chief for another 2 years, implementing sweeping reforms in training, accountability, and bias recognition. He made sure every officer in his department understood what happened to him could never happen to anyone else under his watch. Lynch disappeared from public life. No interviews, no statements. He moved to another state, worked security jobs under a different name. Some say he still blames Vernon for ruining his career. Others say he learned nothing from what happened. Vernon doesn't think about him much anymore. He thinks about the lobby, the elevator, the moment he was told he didn't belong somewhere he had every right to be. He thinks about how many other people without a badge or a title or resources, face that same moment every day. And he thinks about what it cost him to stand his ground and what it would have cost him not to. 3 years later, Vernon retired from the Detroit Police Department with full honors. He gives talks now at law enforcement conferences about dignity, accountability, and the dangers of unchecked bias. He tells the story of that Tuesday afternoon, the torn suit, the cold marble floor, the night in a cell, and he always ends with the same question. What would you have done if someone told you that you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? Would you have walked away? Would you have complied? Or would you have stood your ground, knowing the cost might be everything? Think about that. Really think about it. Because one day, you might have to make that choice yourself. Before you go, drop a comment and let us know. Do you think justice was truly served? Would you have handled it differently? And if you found this story powerful, hit that like button and subscribe. We bring you real stories about real injustice and real courage. Stories that need to be told. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.